And we're live. Hi everyone, it's Ash here from FPL Hints, back with the first FPL Hints live of the 23-24 season. Hope all is going well. For those that have tuned into my content throughout pre-season, you'll know that literally since mid-June, I've been doing a host of different live streams, not an FPL Hints live, more so streams related to draft mock-ups, and also some other interesting videos as well, which basically aggregated together is my pre-season guide. So that's something that is on my pinned, I was going to say tweet. It's not even a tweet anymore. It's an X, my pinned X on X that I use. So be sure to check that out as well. So on this show, I'm going to preview game week 1. I'll show you the latest version of my team. It's not near being final at all. I'll also go through the captaincy polling data as well, and I'll also be previewing each of the games for game week 1. So yeah, look, let's not waste any time and let's get straight into it. So what I'm going to do first of all, just make sure I've got everything set up here, is I'm going to just show you where my team is at right now at this moment in time. So let me just make sure I've got everything right. Here we go. So here's my team as it stands right now. So this is my penultimate draft within FPL. So I will be making changes to this draft between now and the game week 1 deadline due to some changes that have taken place. But before I continue, if you're able to like, share, and subscribe, that would be greatly appreciated. And I've muted the Twitter Spaces just so that I'm just promoting it there, but it's literally all done through this YouTube link. So the team as it stands right now, got Ramsdale in goal, definitely wanted some Arsenal cover, Shaw, Stones, and Estupinan. I feel that this team is the back line is better than the current template back line, so fairly content with that. Of course, I could go for a 4-man defense, get Gabriel in. Ramsdale could be a Pickford, but I feel that due to the new refereeing guidelines that I'd want to see how it goes with the 3-man defense right now, rather than go all in with a 4-man defense. And then onto my midfield as it currently stands. Of course, Kane seems to be Germany bound at this moment in time. So Maddison is in the team right now, but I'm likely to ditch him if Kane isn't at Spurs for the 23-24 season and if he's leaving in the next 24 to 48 hours. Saka, Fernandes, Rashford, fairly happy with that. And then got Mitoma making up the midfield as well, with Watkins and Haaland as my strikers. And then the bench, Turner, hopefully a 4.0 starting keeper. And then Baldock, Colwill, and Mubama as my defenders. And to be honest with you, throughout pre-season, I've actually had like basically dud subs altogether, where I've not even had like a 4.5 defender. But in this iteration, I believe this is probably the first iteration that I have where I've gone for a 4.5 defender on the bench. And with Mubama hoping for some cameo points, Baldock hoping he'll start some games as well. But I didn't want to have a heavy bench. With Colwill, the thinking is that Chelsea have a very good run of games after Liverpool. Would love to get James or Chilwell in as well, but I need some sort of Chelsea defensive cover, and I hope that that's the bare minimum in my squad for the time being. So in terms of changes that I'm looking to make, clearly Mohamed Salah is missing here, like a big gap from seasons gone by where he'd be an absolute must-have. So with Maddison to Salah, that's a -5 hole that I need to fill in. And really the only way I could do it, I actually did a draft, a mock draft on what I think Fabio Borges's team would be like. And in that instance, I argued that he would have Salah in his team. And the only way you could really get Mohamed Salah in with Saka, with Fernandes, with Rashford, with Haaland, is by going 4-5-1. So I haven't ruled that out of the like combinations that I'm considering right now, but 4-5-1 could be the way forward. So yeah, 3-5-2 right now. If you ask me, given a choice, could I get Mohamed Salah in with a 3-5-2? I would prefer that, but then realistically, I'd need João Pedro as a starting striker instead, and then I'd have to do some other chopping and changing in the back. I might need to rely on Turner as a starting keeper to make it work. So that's where I'm at right now, but I'm very happy with this defense, to be honest with you. If you ask me to pick like a 3-man defense and that goalkeeper, I don't want to say it's locked in, but if I wasn't having this Mohamed Salah conundrum with my squad right now, I would definitely like be settled with this defense. There's not really much wrong with it from my perspective, with the run of games and also the prowess that each of these players possess. Obviously, with Ramsdale, there's a concern with Raya, who could challenge him for minutes, but I doubt that's going to happen immediately. But we'll see what happens there. So let's go straight into the preview now of the games for game week 1, coming on to Friday's game, 8 o'clock kickoff with a 6:30 p.m. deadline, Burnley against Man City. And this isn't the Burnley of old, where we had Sean Dyche, defensive team. This is a very different Burnley team. This is a very attacking Burnley team. And of course, their manager is Vincent Kompany, so former club captain at Manchester City. So there's a lot of like mixed emotions going on there with this fixture. But clearly, it has to be a Man City win. I've got no doubt that Burnley will give them a real challenge at Turf Moor, but I'm going to go for 2-0 Man City. Coming on to the Saturday games, and it's the lunchtime kickoff, Arsenal against Nottingham Forest. It'll be very interesting to see if Turner does start this game, having literally just left Arsenal not that long ago. And I think the other keeper, Hennessy, is injured. They had the keeper that they loaned out to Luton Town. I think he's back. And obviously the Henderson situation remains unresolved. So very good chance that Turner will start this game. But it's Arsenal at home. You'd expect them to hit the ground running just like they did last year. Jesus is a big loss for Arsenal, but with Havertz in the team, you've got Trossard there as well. There's bags of talent. There's bags of goals in this game. I'm going 2-0 Arsenal for the Saturday lunchtime kickoff. And then coming on to Bournemouth against West Ham. Of course, West Ham are the European champions, albeit for Conference League. And Bournemouth are a team, one of those teams where last season they didn't have the best of starts after getting hammered by Liverpool early on in that famous 9-0 defeat. And of course, Mohamed Salah remarkably dodged any fantasy returns in that game. But they obviously bounced back. And I think they, if I'm not mistaken, they finished well above the relegation, 5 points away from the relegation zone. And of course, Dominic Solanke has been an integral part of the Bournemouth team. And you've got the likes of Billing in there as well. I think at home, and this West Ham team seems a bit like transitional as well. I'm going to go for a Bournemouth win. West Ham without Declan Rice seems like a different kettle of fish altogether. So let's go 2-1 Bournemouth for this fixture. And then coming on to Brighton against Luton. Of course, this is a big match for Luton, their first ever match in the Premier League, not in the top flight, but in the Premier League. So they'll no doubt be wanting to go all out against a Brighton team that is basically like a money-making club. They find all these cheap players and then they sell them for mega bucks. And remarkably, despite the buying and the selling, they have the coaching system at Brighton. They've got a fantastic coach there who's managed to just keep them like not just steady, but really fighting for those top places, and they're in Europe this season as well. And who knows how high Brighton can finish this season. And it's always tough to predict when a team is going through transition. Of course, McAllister isn't at Brighton this season, and Caicedo's on his way out as well. And then you've got the new signings that have come in, and also like signings that went out on loan, like Adingra, he'll be coming in as well. And they've just got this really nice balance of youth players, up and coming players, established players, and of course they've got the likes of Lallana, Milner in there as well. I'm calling this a comfortable Brighton win, 2-0 at home against Luton Town. I'm not biased in any way. I've got Stupinan, so hoping that clean sheet is locked in. And I think, to be honest with you, Luton, as great as it is to see them in the Premier League, I think they're going to struggle. I know that the marquee signing of Barkley came through recently, and no doubt he'll show some of his star quality. I think Barkley even played, he's not even 30 years old yet, and he was actually playing at the 2014 World Cup, if I'm not mistaken. So seems like he's been around for ages. I didn't even realise he was playing in France last season. But yeah, he's some nice star quality for them. But yeah, calling that Brighton win. Everton against Fulham. With Fulham, there was all this transfer saga about Mitrovic and what would happen there, and that seems unresolved. And they've signed Raul Jimenez, got Vincius, who also put in a good shift for Fulham last season when Mitrovic was banned. So, as a whole, it's just if that situation still isn't resolved, then he might still be unsettled. But from my understanding, he'll likely start the match on Saturday. And you've got Everton, of course, who basically just struggled and just avoided the relegation drop. Literally, was it 2 points against Leicester ultimately, and then they actually had a worse goal difference than Leicester. So that one win, which they managed to find, and in fact, less wins than Leicester as well last season. So very lucky to avoid the drop. I think it'll be a tough struggle for Everton as well this season. They've made some interesting signings like Dan Juma, so we'll see how he's doing when he's fully fit. And they've signed a new 19-year-old striker as well. It's going to be, I'll call this one a draw. I think it's, they'll cancel each other out for this fixture. You've got Sheffield United back in the Premier League against Palace with a 3 p.m. kickoff as well. Of course, Palace no longer have their talisman, Wilfried Zaha. Could be a massive loss to them, but then they've got the likes of Eze and Elise as well. And Roy Hodgson, of course, came back to the club and saved them from relegation, essentially. And they got Sheffield United, who, of course, had that stint in the Premier League not that long ago when Lord Lundstrom reigned supreme. But they had their troubles, but they're back as well. And if I'm not mistaken, Ndai, who was very high in their goal involvements last season, he's left now. And that's going to cause them like some issues as well. So not sure where their goals are going to be coming from. But I'm going to call this a Palace win. Let's call it a narrow 1-0 win for Palace. Look, before I move on to the next preview, if you're able to like, share, and subscribe, that will be greatly appreciated. This channel only continues with your support, and I enjoy doing the live streams, the videos, and the occasional shorts as well. But yeah, I need your likes, shares, and subscribes. I'm short of 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. It would be really good if I could hit that before the Game Week 1 deadline. Looking unlikely, but just show your support in any of those ways, please. Coming to Newcastle United and Aston Villa, of course, two clubs who really punched above their weight and did well. Of course, Newcastle bankrolled with the money that they've got with the new owners, but like the change in board post Mike Ashley, I would say that they actually defied expectations and punched above their weight to get to the Champions League in such a short turnaround from being relegation strugglers to finishing fourth. And with Aston Villa, just seem totally transformed from being managed by Gerrard to Unai Emery. and both of these teams will be having like European campaigns as well. So it'll be interesting to see how they manage in the league. I think that with Newcastle, new signings as well have added to the mix, and Aston Villa have strengthened their defence as well. As a Newcastle fan, I'm a bit biased here as well. I'm going to call this controversially a draw, even though Newcastle at home will be favourites and we've got some tricky games coming up as well. I just feel that with Unai Emery, I think neither team would want to lose this match. I know we've got a relatively good record of late against Villa as well, but I'll call this a draw. And then on to the Sunday games. Well, Sunday, 2 games there. Brentford against Spurs. Flecken's a new goalkeeper. He's not really looked like, but he's not really stood out for me in the preseason games, but it is what it is, I guess. And with Brentford, Ivan Toney's going to be a massive loss this season whilst he's suspended. I think Mbuemo's yellow flagged for game week 1, but you've got the likes of Wissar and many other players who can step up as well. I think Sharda, who didn't get many minutes last season, he'll be an interesting one to see how and where he fills the void, and they're playing Spurs. And Spurs will be a very different team if Kane is no longer there. And at one point, I actually tried to shoehorn Kane into my FPL team, I think before the penultimate draft. And ultimately, I then decided, you know what, I'll get Maddison in, hence Maddison being in my penultimate draft at the moment. But I will almost certainly get rid of Maddison now. Just like with Spurs, of course, you've got the likes of Kulusevski, got Richarlison, Son, who can score the goals as well. But Kane was a different beast altogether, and that'll be a massive loss. Initially, I was even thinking this could have been a Spurs win, but I think that the team will be so subdued if Kane isn't there that Brentford, just by default, should nick a win here. So I'll call this 2-1 Brentford. And then Chelsea against Liverpool. We've got Pochettino back in the Premier League and a very different Chelsea. It seems like they was just selling so many players this summer. And they struggled, of course, when they finished 12th in the Premier League last season. No doubt they'll be much better. There's no European commitments as well. And often you see when a big club has struggled the season before, there's no European football. We saw it with Arsenal a couple of years back as well, that like reduced fixture scheduling allows them to just focus even more on the league. So they'll finish easily top 5, top 6 this season. And then you've got Liverpool, who they're facing off in this game. Again, Liverpool have had some transition as well. Some like stalwart players have left, like Henderson and Firmino. And they've got some new players that have come in and will be coming in as well. Very tough one to call. I'm going to call this a draw as well. It's probably the second or third draw I've called from the fixtures. Neither team would want to lose this match, but I think they'll just cancel each other out at Stamford Bridge. And then lastly, coming on to the Monday night game, United against Wolves. Again, Wolves were one of those teams that I thought really didn't do that well last season. And they had a patch where they were struggling, but they finished 13th in the end, 7 points above the relegation zone. And they've just lost their manager. So that's going to cause some imbalance in their squad. And I think that Gary O'Neill's taken over now, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm not expecting Wolves to finish 13th in the league this season. Raul Jimenez has gone as well, but not the same Raul Jimenez of old. I think they'll struggle around the relegation zone, but then you've got Manchester United, who did fantastically well last season. Rashford, of course, their key man. You've got Bruno Fernandes, who I believe is now the captain at United as well. This has to be a comfortable United win at Old Trafford against a Wolves team that has to just needs some sort of momentum, and they don't have it. 3-0 to Manchester United at home. So all of this now brings me on to the captaincy polling data for game week 1. So for those that don't know, I run a captaincy poll every week, and it's something that I've done just so that I can gauge who will be the EO captain, as it were, the popular captain. And to be perfectly honest with you, I don't even really have to run the poll anymore. I just kind of know who who essentially is going to be that captain just by guessing, really. But here's the poll that I ran, and I have changed the question over the past like 12 to 18 months as well. So the question that I've kept it at from the end of last season is, who do you think will score the most FPL points in game week 1? And then I literally gave 2 options: Haaland against Burnley and other. And it's interesting, like Haaland obviously had a fantastic 22-23 season, but it kind of felt like, not that he slowed down, but the goals kind of dried up towards the end of last season. And I think because of that, you've got this large minority, this 1 in 4, that are potentially going against him for captaincy. Of course, his ownership in FPL now is like, if I'm not mistaken, is it almost 90%? Just have a quick check. So even if you don't captain him, at least if you own him, that's the main thing. Yeah, he's 88% as things stand right now. So I think the alternative captains really are Saka, Rashford, really. And beyond that, I can't see who else people would captain. But I just want to also do this comparative thing as well to validate where my polling is at compared to other polls. So the other poll that I'm going to show is the poll from FPL Focal on his YouTube channel. He asks, who is your captain for FPL Game Week 1? His poll, very similar to mine in the sense that Haaland has he's leading by the lion's share, 81% in this instance, and you've got Saka and Salah behind, and single digits, and you've got other at 4%. So clearly Haaland is the EO captain here as well. And then onto another poll, just to show it here. It's up here. It's the Fantasy Football Scout poll. And theirs is slightly different, whereby they've got more, they always have more than 4 options. I think they give you like almost more than 12 here. So as a result of there being more options in the Fantasy Football Scout poll, the leading captain always tends to have like a slightly lower percentage than the other polls. So here we've got Haaland at 64.27%. So yeah, that's kind of, I was expecting it to be less for the reasons that I've mentioned there. And yeah, Haaland is the EO captain. You can go against him. It's not a problem. And there'll be a big difference between the percentage of those that captain Haaland among the engaged managers and just the overall FPL managers as well. So yeah, with all of this in mind, it ultimately brings me onto the question of what will be his effective ownership as well. And it's something that I enjoy calculating as well. So just to remind you of my poll as well. So 74.6% on my poll. It's 81% on the FPL Focal poll and 64% on the Fantasy Football Scout poll. So in a nutshell, Haaland will be the EO captain for Game Week 1. I'm projecting that Haaland's EO will exceed 170% for Game Week 1 among the legendary and engaged managers. I'll call it at 175% EO. What that means is that if Haaland hauls in Game Week 1 and you don't captain him, it could devastate your rank from the get-go. So if you want to go safe and go template, he is the captain choice. So there you have it. I've got no doubt many may go against him as the captain choice, but if you want to go safe, Haaland is the way forward. I don't think there's a lot in it in terms of the expected FPL points as well. In fact, I'll share that as well. That's a new thing that I'm looking at this season, and I'll put a link in the description below well. So that's something that I basically looked at my lessons learned from 22-23, and what was it that I didn't do that I decided to focus more on this season. And it was basically I relied on gut instinct just too much on a lot of 50-50 calls, and I literally didn't look at any expected stats data at all. And it got me thinking that perhaps I should look at expected stats data just at the very least as a secondary metric. So I'm going to just show this here as well. So I'll firstly do the game week 1 view in terms of expected points. So this is from DraftHound, and Haaland is projected to be the highest point scorer in game week 1. And with their expected stats data, it relies on a number of different influences, which I've mentioned on previous streams as well. And it all gets aggregated for this expected FPL point score, xFPL as I call it. So the projection is, so I've mentioned how Haaland is the EO captain based on my own projection, and then looking at the points, 6.8 points for Haaland, Rashford, Saka, Martinelli, all of these players expected to score 6 or more, even Odegaard, and then Fernandez and Havertz with less than 6 points there. You've got Stupinan with 5.5 points. So a lot of these players are template players, and that if you don't have these players in game week 1, if you go fully rogue, fully differential, it could be problematic for your overall rank. So just keep that in mind. And let's just do the 3 game view as well. And again, Haaland reigns supreme. He is the perma captain for a reason, and it's for that simple metric you can see on screen there that he's projected to score the most number of points in game week 1. And in fact, between game week 1, 2, and 3, you got Saka and Rashford not far behind, so keep them in mind as well. And of course, Martinelli there in 4th place. Got Mohamed Salah as well. If you can shoehorn Salah in to your draft, he's someone who's expected to score a significant number of points as well. And of course, Liverpool have a lot of new players and attackers. But if you were to guess, surely Mohamed Salah's ex-mins will be far more guaranteed than many of the others. So yeah, that's just a new metric that I'm considering, and it's not for everyone. Some people would prefer gut instinct over expected stats, but it's something that I've had as part of my own lessons learned, and I'm not fully relying on it. I'm not one of these people who just rely on an algorithm fully, AI fully. That's not for me, but I want it as a deciding metric. Of course, I've shown you my effective ownership projection. That's just me doing my own maths and calculation, and you can go against that. But when it comes to captaincy, I am one of the highest ranked captaincy pickers in the world. So that's where my thought process is coming from on that front. So it's not from a place of speculation. And in fact, I'll probably just for the sake of validation, I'll show you my stats from the 22-23 season if the site that I use hasn't updated. Let me just have a quick check. I think that it may have done, but like I think that this website, it's Premier Fantasy Tools, and literally among the top 13,000 tracked managers, I was up there like the top 150. So that's where, yeah, that's where it works for me. And just make sure I can get this to work. Oh, no, can't get it to work. So I'll leave it at that for now. And yeah, look, for those that have tuned in, just want to say it again. If you're able to like, share, and subscribe, that will be greatly appreciated. If you comment as well, that'll be good. And if you have any questions, I might have time to answer some questions as well. And I can see I do have some. So let's have a look here. Yeah, if you want to get your questions in, now is the time to do so. And then I'll wrap up. So do you think Edison is a safe starter? Now that's a bit of a strange one. I've not heard that Edison is like not fit. Of course, Ortega was getting starts towards the end of last season, but I think that was more so that Edison gets somewhat of a rest as Man City went for the treble chase, which they successfully completed. So I would expect Edison to be a regular starter. Like Ortega, apart from the cup games and the odd European game, I can't really see him starting others. So I would say that Edison is a safe starter, but at the same time, you'd want to have like a Turner as your 4.0 sub keeper in the event he gets randomly benched. Coming on to Pedro Porro, will he start against Brentford? I'm not too sure about that one, to be honest with you. Pedro Porro's a player I'm very keen on getting into my FPL team at some point in the early part of the season when the fixtures turn, possibly as a wildcard one option. But I don't know how safe he is or how rotation prone he is under the system that's been devised by the new manager. So yeah, it's a tough one. I would say that I'm not sure if he's going to start. He'll no doubt have some managed minutes, but I wouldn't get him in early on. Coming on to the next question, should I buy João Pedro? So João Pedro, of course, is someone who we've seen play in the Premier League during his time at Watford. He now joins a Brighton team that has a very diverse set of attackers. You've got Danny Welbeck, you've got Ferguson there as well, and Enciso to a degree can play up top as well. But João Pedro is your go-to 5.5 midfielder. My gut instinct says he'll probably start for Brighton, but his minutes will be heavily managed. So if you're relying on a 3-5-2 or a 4-4-2 formation, just keep that in mind, that he's not someone who's going to get your 90 minutes week in, week out. In fact, I don't think there's really any 5.5 strikers. The only one I could think of, I think he's 5.0. It's Morris of Luton Town, who might get some minutes in that price bracket. But then, like I said, Luton Town will potentially struggle. Of course, he scored a healthy number of goals in the Championship last season. But yeah, look, João Pedro, I'm not going to completely rule him out. But if you're looking for that 5.5 striker to accommodate a heavy midfield, then Pedro may be the go-to solution. Otherwise, you can just go 4-5-1 without him. Coming on to the next question, do I think that Jackson of Chelsea is a viable pick? Yes, absolutely. With Jackson, you've got Nkunku, who's now been ruled out, and Chelsea have sold some strikers this during pre-season as well. I'm expecting him to start against Liverpool. He's got a very generous run of games. 7.0 seems like a steal in his price range as well. And oddly enough, I actually created a draft where I could even get Jackson in as a sub one. So that's something that is food for thought, but he's untested in the Premier League. If you had the extra million and you had a choice between Jackson or Watkins, I would say get Watkins, because we know what Watkins can do in the Premier League. Whereas with Jackson, we have no idea how he's going to adapt. And it's a very different Chelsea team to last season as well. So it'll take them time to adapt. Whereas with Aston Villa, you've got Diaby, Pau Torres, but more or less same team. But someone said something quite interesting to me on Twitter, that because because Villa have a lot of injured midfielders right now, does that make Ollie Watkins less viable an asset? And that's a good point, that he may get less opportunities to score, might receive less chances. But yeah, I like the Jackson pick. I think it's a very differential pick as well. But I would say that if you can get him in, and well, firstly, if you want to unlock funds from Watkins, then fair enough. But he's more of a differential pick. But my gut instinct says I'd like to see him play before I buy him, to be honest with you. Next question, should we consider bringing in Salah after the last Liverpool signing and Bournemouth playing attacking tactics, so empty areas for Salah? Good captain choice as well. I just want to make this one thing clear, that I've heard so many content creators say, oh, if we get Mohamed Salah, then it's a problem for captaincy. There's going to be a headache for them. I don't really care, to be honest with you. if Mohamed Salah is scoring goals, you get him in. Haaland is scoring goals, you get him in. Simple as that. I even had Kane in an iteration, like I mentioned, and I felt that like I could have made that work as well. So I do like the Salah pick, and I actually shared. In fact, let me get this on. Let me share this really quickly as well. That I not that I was teasing, but like I did like the look of this thing. Let me just get it up here. One moment. Here we go. So I mean, just look at midfield: Saka, Salah, Fernandes, Rashford. That looks incredible, doesn't it? And you can get that midfield without like completely wrecking your team. You could have that in a 3-5-2. You can have it in a 4-4-2. You can have it in a 4-5-1. So I like the Salah pick, if I'm being honest. If there's one Liverpool player that I'd get, it's Mohamed Salah. And because I'm going to almost certainly get rid of Maddison, I'm going to try and shoehorn Mohamed Salah in. The other option, and the fitness is really a concern here, is De Bruyne. That if I knew that De Bruyne was starting and he was fully fit, I'd potentially get him in as well instead of Mohamed Salah. And you've got that 2 million price difference as well. But yeah, it's a real tough one at the same time, because like with De Bruyne, he's more of a differential right now. With Mohamed Salah, he isn't an essential, but you kind of feel scores a goal against Chelsea, scores a goal against Bournemouth, he becomes essential overnight. And there's like a very simple rule when it comes to like these sorts of players, that it's very easy to downsize from Mohamed Salah than it is to upsize to him without taking a plethora of hits. So that's something that is definitely worth keeping in mind as well. Another question I actually got through my DM, it's not in the chat, but I'll just mention it right now as well, is should we bench boost during game week 1? And this was literally not, this was like a non-option. This is a very niche idea. And yet all of a sudden, because one or two content creators have mentioned it, it seems to have gained popularity. I'm totally against it, because game week 1 is so unknown. We just don't know what's going to happen. At least when we use bench boost during double game weeks, there's the extra game. We have information on, we know the styles of play. And at the same time, if you've had a poor record with bench boost over the years, then yeah, okay, go for it. But I'm just not a fan of it. Bench boost in game week 1. I think there's just too much risk. I've heard from the stuff I've read that there won't be like a huge bench boost this season. Even if there was like a moderately sized one, even if there was a small one, I wouldn't use bench boost like for the later double game weeks. But if we had like one that popped up around springtime, literally the first reasonable bench boost option I had, and if there was a wildcard opportunity as well, I'd use it then. So yeah, in one, I can see some logic behind it, but then you've got a very what are you going to do? You've got to have to wildcard early, because you have like a very like bench friendly team, and you're risking like losing points on the bench. So on to the next question, and I need to pronounce this name correctly, because I pronounced it Chukwuemeka, but I understand it's Chukwuemeka of Chelsea. Is he a nailed starter? So I did a video with some content creators, and we needed like a 4.5 midfield budget option, and he was actually the player that was called out there. And I feel that with him, like if you want a 4.5 midfielder, the answer is there's literally not that many at all. But I think he's one to monitor. Let's put it that way. And I'm not going to pronounce his name again. And in the chat, I see that someone's mentioned Salah's name. Salah. I hear a lot of people say Salah, and I don't think that's a mispronunciation, but Salah is how I understand his name to be pronounced. So I say it in that way. 4.5 goalkeeper or Onana. So 4.5 goalkeeper is literally what Pickford or Steele. And with Onana, the fixtures, I mean, just to remind you all, for Manchester United, I feel that for the attackers, the run of games looks fairly generous for Manchester United, but I just want to bring up the fixtures here, like from a clean sheet perspective. And right now I've got Luke Shaw in my team, but you look at those fixtures. Okay, Wolves clean sheet potential, Tottenham away all of a sudden without Kane. Yeah, there's clean sheet potential there now. Forest clean sheet potential. Arsenal away, no. Brighton at home, possibly not. Burnley away, potential. Clean sheet potential against Palace. Brentford at home, possibly. Sheffield United away. And then you've got City. So, yeah, there's probably like, for the first 10 games, 7 or 8 clean sheet potential opportunities for Manchester United. So, Onana probably is worth that 5.0 million. So, worth considering without a shadow of a doubt. Yeah. And then on to my next question. So what do I think about, is it Udogie? The clips from preseason are very encouraging. So yeah, with him, I don't know a lot about him, if I'm being perfectly honest with you. I understand he plays as a wing back, but he's one of those players I just wouldn't want to get him in until I've seen him, because he's untested in the Premier League. So yeah, one to watch, one to add to the watch list. And then on to the next question, just being mindful of the time as well. Given that Jesus is out, is Nketiah a cheap option to get an extra Arsenal attacker? So my default was, oh yeah, he is, because before the Community Shield, Jesus was given the armband in a friendly and scored in that friendly, and I thought, oh, that's great. Again, don't want to read too much into it. And then Community Shield came, and then yeah, he didn't start at all. And the reality is, you can get Trossard in there, you can get Havertz in there as well. So his ex-mins are a serious risk as an Arsenal attacker. If you're going to get an Arsenal triple up, do not get Nketiah. Absolutely not. You can get Saka. When you can get Gabriel, Odegaard and Saka, or Gabriel, Martinelli and Saka, or a double Arsenal clean sheet double up and Saka, you just wouldn't get Nketiah in. As good as he is, as much as he deserves starts for Arsenal, yeah, he's just not an option for me. Would you start Watkins or Pedro for game week 1 if you had both? So I'm assuming you're probably going for a 3-4-3 option there. And yeah, it's a tough one. I mean, Watkins has the X-Mins. João Pedro, he's just got that potential against newly promoted Luton as well. That is a very tough 50-50 call. If you just based it solely on the opposition, you'd say João Pedro. If it's just based on the fixture, then you base it on form and minutes, it is Watkins. That is a very tough call to make. So I've not had a single draft where I've got both in. I've seen a lot of drafts with one or the other, but it just depends. Just depends on what your approach is to it. You can make a case for both ultimately, but yeah, just as if you want to go for an upside pick rather than the safer pick, I'd say start Pedro. What do you make of Havertz as a differential punt? I think he could be an option, but is he 7 million in the game? Again, I just feel that this game, the way they've reduced their prices, like Saka should not be 8.5 million. Odegaard should not be 8.5 million. Gabriel shouldn't be 5 million. If you're going to triple up on Arsenal, then get the ex-Mins Arsenal players. That's my take on it, really. So I think that's all I'm going to say on the Q&A front for today. I want to just say this again. This channel can't continue without your support. I'm close to 1,000 subscribers. So if you're able to subscribe, like and share, and even comment, that would be greatly appreciated. My intention is to do one of these streams before each game week, as I've done for the past 2 seasons. I was meant to do it last night, but then I kind of got distracted and had to just like focus on some other things and create some other videos. So didn't do it last night, but normally my FPL Hints live stream takes place a night before the game week. And I'm hoping that I will do a team reveal before the game week 1 deadline as well. I'll try and stream live between 5:30 to 6:30 BST today as well. And I've had a long, hard think about it. And there's something that I used to do for a very long time that I stopped doing. I used to share my team before each game week deadline, and then I stopped it. And I'm now thinking to myself that, you know what, I think I'm ready to share my team before the deadline again. And it's something that, like, if I feel I might begin sharing it regularly, but if I feel that it's become a strain, it just seemed I did it like what for 8 years. I did it for like 8 or 9 years. I shared my team for every game week, and I did it before it even became like a regular thing. Like 10 years ago, 11 years ago, people would not share their teams before the deadline, but I did. So I think I will do it for game week 1. I will show you the team in real time as I save and confirm my changes. And then, yeah, just depending on how I feel, I'll probably carry it on throughout the season. But then if I feel it's gotten too much, I'll put a halt to it. But that's a new change that I'll be doing. That before the deadline, it's my intention, especially for game week 1, to share it. And if I have a really bad start, I probably won't. But yeah, it just feels right to do so. Haven't done it since 2020, so I will definitely consider doing that. Anyway, speak to you all in a few hours, and good luck tinkering in the remaining time. Just don't forget, deadline is 6:30 p.m. BST, and first game kicks off at 8 p.m. So may your arrows be green, may your mind be serene. Please like, share, and subscribe. Check out my pre-season guide as well. Take care and all the best. Thank you. Bye.